Now, before we get started with tonight's very exciting topic, and I'm so looking forward to the topic, I would like to thank our sponsor, the Neighboring Food Co-op Association. They are a regional federation of 40 food co-ops and startups, and they're celebrating 10 years of working toward the vision of a thriving regional economy, which is rooted in a healthy, just, and sustainable food system. So congratulations to their 40 years, their 10 years, I'm sorry, I'm giving them a longer track record, but congratulations to their 10 years of service in that area. I'd also like to take this time to thank all the NOFA Mass staff and board who work to make not only this webinar successful, but all of our online events very successful. We could not do that without them, without my colleagues, and Marty being a member of that crew. We are very grateful to the board and staff. And if you are interested in learning more about our education and policy work, if you want to join NOFA Mass, and I encourage folks who are in the Massachusetts area, if you're in Massachusetts, join NOFA Mass. If you're coming from Connecticut or New Hampshire, join the NOFA chapters in those states. We greatly would appreciate your support. We are all working to make organic farming and gardening education advocacy efforts available to everyone in the state. Doesn't matter where it is. And so we really appreciate your support. Our presenters tonight, I'm so excited to have them here with us. Marty Dagoberto, he's NOFA Mass's policy director, doing a very awesome job. You see a lot of his writings about the different bills that come out in our newsletters and has led that effort for NOFA Mass. We really appreciate his work, and joining him on this wonderful discussion tonight is Mireille Bejjani. She is the Western Mass community organizer with Community Action Works. So we're looking for a wonderful conversation. So at this time, without any further delay, I want to give it over to Mireille and Marty, and we're looking forward to a wonderful, wonderful discussion tonight. So Mireille and Marty, go ahead and take it away.
This is on our regular monthly evening that we usually have our CPR meeting for Community Pesticides Reduction Network. And I say we have a few of our regular members of the network, and hopefully we have many more soon to be members of the network. And I guess since you're here, you can consider yourself part of it. And yeah, so Mireille and I this evening, we're just gonna run through a bit of an overview of what we do at the CPR network, share some updates on what's happening at the state level on recent policy efforts to protect pollinators, and yeah, and just help us all find ways to plug in and to bring a greater connection to this movement to protect pollinators through our policy work at the local, state, and federal level. If we can get the slides up here.
So the CPR network, as Marty mentioned, it's a monthly meeting, and NOFA Mass and Community Action Works, we co-facilitate it, and we also have the support of some of these other groups that you see here on the screen, the Massachusetts Pollinator Network, which we'll tell you more about later tonight, Beyond Pesticides, Regeneration Massachusetts, and Friends of the Earth. So really awesome effort, and we're going to tell you all about how it kind of combines the policy and organizing side of pesticides work. So our niche really is helping everyday people form powerful groups to tackle pesticide use at the local level through municipal policy changes across the Bay State. So really digging into within a community, within a town, through city council or town meetings and things like that, what are steps that folks can take to reduce the pesticide use of their municipality and protect pollinators along the way. And a few of the most common campaigns that we support these community groups in running are, one, to become a pollinator friendly community. And what that usually looks like is creating a non-binding resolution through the city council or through a town meeting. So important to note here that that's just a first step that can then lead to further things down the line. As it says here, it's non-binding, and as a result doesn't necessarily have a ton of teeth, but is a really great statement for the town to make, and then opens the door to encouraging the town to then live up to that, pollinator friendly title. Another step is to institute organic pest management in your own town or city. And that can look like creating new regulations and an official organic pest management policy or plan with your Board of Health. And this is a step that has more teeth to it, as more enforceable as a regulation that just is, is a little bit, it's a concrete things that can then be enforced. And the last thing is a ban or a moratorium on a particular pesticide, and that can be through commitments from town departments like the Department of Public Works, Parks, etc., to stop using certain chemicals. And all of this is under the umbrella that in Massachusetts, there are preemption laws that prevent towns from outright banning certain from banning pesticide use across town and public and private use in all different uses. You can't make a blanket ban, but there are other ways to definitely really reduce pesticide use at the local level, and these are the top 3 ways that we support communities in doing that.
Yeah, so as you see, we've been holding up Marblehead as really the gold standard for community level action that is protecting pollinators by and reducing pesticide use by enacting organic land care policies. So, rather than, and we talked about, as Mireille just said, we have the pollinator friendly communities, which is a resolution from the town that demonstrates the values of the town to protect pollinators, but it's non-binding. It doesn't have any teeth to it. When you have the single pesticide bans, it's great when you're able to do that, but it's playing whack-a-mole because you get one and then there's the next one in the line. We really want to see an organic land care plan implemented so that your DPW, any town employees that are managing town maintained landscapes are doing so in an organic fashion. And that doesn't mean swapping out synthetic pesticides for organic pesticides. That's focusing on biodiversity, on healthy soils, and integrated pest management in order to promote natural, and organic management practices to prevent pest problems before they manifest. And so Marblehead actually was very early out of the gate on this. Around 99, 2000, they enacted through their Board of Health a policy to eliminate the use of toxic pesticides on town-owned land and to enact organic land care. And of course, there are exemptions for water, for rodent control, issues around water, but those waivers are on a case-by-case basis. And this very much relies on the work of NOFA and working with the Organic Materials Review Institute for the list of products that can be used. And Marblehead has the great value of having a national expert in organic land care as a resident and who's responsible for kicking this off 20 years ago. Since then, Beyond Pesticides has taken their policy, updated it, and that's the model that we are using, that we have in our resources to enable communities to advocate for these kind of policies in their locality. So we'll be taking questions, and please do keep them coming in the chat. Thanks for that. We'll break for questions in just a bit. But yes, Chip Osborne is the expert in Marblehead, and he is a rock star. Thank you, Adela. If we get the next slide, please. So the CPR network, we started with our monthly meetings in December of 2018, and we're not taking credit for all these victories. This is a network, but many of the people, and there may be some of you on the call here, and if you are, certainly speak up in the chat. But we saw a string of victories in 2019. Of course, things got a little weird in 2020, you might have noticed, but we did see a great string of victories with Newburyport Parks Department agreeing to stop using glyphosate. We've had moratoria on glyphosate with the good work of POCA, Protect Our Cape Cod Aquifer, down there on the Cape. And then the Northampton City Council created a committee to investigate the reduction of pesticides use. Hopkinton's Board of Health formed an organic land care advisory committee. In Peterson, they had a pollinator-friendly community. And Bridgewater had a pollinator-friendly resolution. And in each of these cases, these victories were won by the organizing of local residents, concerned citizens just like you, who formed a group, got talking to people, got on the agenda, made their arguments, and were able to mobilize people to support their measure and get it through. And our calls serve to bring people like this together to share their lessons, and to instigate catalyze similar work in their communities. Go next slide, please. So our overarching strategy for building our grassroots power to take on the chemical industry, we recognize that the chemical lobby has an inordinate amount of influence, as does any profit-driven entity with major financial resources. They have an inordinate influence on our government at the state and federal level. And so, the only way to counter that capital that they have is with the people power that we're able to mobilize. And so, very much starting at the grassroots, at the community level, to get people started locally, to meet their neighbors where they're at. And perhaps it's simply starting with the Be Friendly resolutions, those non-binding, feel good, easy to pass statements that are the foot in the door to then continue to build a group, build momentum, educate town officials, and to push for pesticide bans and these organic land management policies. So we go from the symbolic, the building your local group, to the actual systemic change, promoting viable alternatives at the local level. And then all the while, as we have this network statewide, we're able to keep everyone up to speed on what's happening at the state level, so that we can mobilize at key moments in the legislative cycle. I'm sure many of you have taken action in the last few weeks, when we put out action alerts for the bills that NOFA Mass is supporting at the State House, which we're going to cover shortly. And so, we've been building this network through your networks, and then we're able to mobilize at these key moments to tackle these state policies. And yeah, we're building our leadership and political analysis throughout this process. So I wanted to give folks an update on where things are at on the legislative, on our state legislative priorities. Keeping in mind that we're obviously still in the pandemic and things are a bit weird, but we can assume that there is going to be public hearings in the fall of 2021, most likely via Zoom. So that removes some of the hurdles to get folks to these hearings. I suspect that some of you participated in the last major hearing that we had in November of 2019 at the State House, where we filled the hearing room with advocates that are supporting restrictions on pesticides to protect pollinators and children in our ecosystems. And those kind of mobilizations are very important in order to impress upon legislators that these issues are important. Along with, of course, the phone calls and the emails, and the more personal, the better. I'm not going to go off on the whole spiel of the pyramid of influence and how we, need to generate those personal calls and emails, but they really do make a difference. And so these are some of the bills that are on our priorities list that are directly related to pollinators. Of course, whenever we're promoting organic agriculture, healthy soils, or reform of pesticides, that's going to be benefiting pollinators. But these are a few that I wanted to bring your attention to. So we do have a consumer ban on glyphosate that was reported favorably by the Agriculture Committee last session, which is a really good sign. And that would remove glyphosate-containing herbicides from the retail stores, and so that only licensed pesticide applicators would be able to use them. Of course, we still have much work to do, even if we were to get that, but it would be a step in the right direction. A lot of folks in this call may be concerned about the aerial spraying for mosquitoes that is going to be picking up again soon. And so we're working with a coalition of organizations to promote ecologically based mosquito disease management and Senator Adam Hines and Rep. Gobea have a bill that we helped to write that replaces the Commonwealth's outdated and expensive mosquito management system with one that's more effective, affordable, transparent, ecologically responsible, and scientifically based. Another one, and this gets to, Mireille brought up the point that we live in a state where we call a preemption state, where there was a law passed in the late 70s that makes it so that only the state can regulate pesticides on private property. A local municipality doesn't have the authority to ban or to restrict pesticides any more stringently than the state does. So Rep. Dylan Fernandez has repeatedly introduced this bill to return power to local governments to prohibit and otherwise restrict the use of pesticides. And then finally, on these bills, and again, you can see all these and more details at nofamass.org/policy. But Rep. Keefe has filed this bill for the last couple sessions that would establish a commission on pollinator health and habitat to look at opportunities for improving pollinator health by enhancing native pollinator habitat. And then, all of these bills and any bill related to pesticides is going to have a very hard time getting through the process. Almost I don't want to say insurmountable, but it is a serious uphill battle to get anything through the process. But when you have major financial interests and their lobbyists that are getting paid $500,000 a year, literally, to advocate for their interests, it makes it very difficult to get them through the process. And but one way that we have found to influence regulation of pesticides is to support a study on the impact of pesticides. And so that's why we've been advocating for a budget amendment, which again, hopefully some of you got the action alert a couple weeks ago. Happy to inform you that the budget passed yesterday did include $25,000 to review the science regarding the health and environmental impacts of glyphosate herbicides. And it requires the commission to produce that report by the end of the year. And so I'll share on the next slide a bit about how that has brought us a victory most recently on the issue of neonicotinoids. Now, glyphosate, as we know, is also related to pollinators, and folks who may have seen the recent stories. The science just came out showing that it's actually the adjuvants, the non-active ingredient, so to speak, in glyphosate-containing herbicides that are killing bumblebees and native bees. But the neonics issue is something that we've known for a long time had detrimental impacts on pollinators, and so we've been pushing for years with Rep. Dykema on the Pollinator Protection Act, which would have restricted use of neonic pesticides and taken them off store shelves that only licensed applicators have access to them. And the pesticide lobby and their surrogates would often say, well, the legislature shouldn't be making science-based decisions on pesticides. That should be left to the Pesticide Board subcommittee, which was established for that purpose. It's no coincidence that the only representation of the public on that subcommittee is someone for the pesticide applicators. And so we supported this budget amendment, $100,000 budget amendment requiring a study of neonics, a literature review that was passed by the legislature in 2019. And so that forced the subcommittee to examine the science on neonics. So it was an act of the legislature through the democratic process. Because of your calls and emails, we had the political will. We had 80 legislators sign a letter to the Pesticide Board subcommittee urging them to restrict use of neonicotinoids. So this is sort of a hybrid approach. We have the legislative route, which has all the roadblocks from industry, and then we have the regulatory route, which I would say is largely captured by industry. But we were able to leverage the political will of legislators because of your calls and emails to force the subcommittee to look at the science. And when they looked at the science, as we expected, it demonstrated that there is sufficient need to restrict use of neonics. And just this past May, they passed a motion to take neonics off store shelves effective July 1st, 2022. And of course, many will say that's not soon enough, but that's how it works. They got to give them some lead time there. But I really wanted to bring this up because we need people more active on attending these pesticide board subcommittee meetings. Now, right now, they're easy to attend theoretically because it's on Zoom. And hopefully when things go back to quote unquote normal, we'll still be able to access them via Zoom. But we really need people to be there, to witness it, to share their concerns about pesticides in their comments. And we are working with legislators to reform how the subcommittee operates and to promote greater transparency. And for all these things, that I'm talking about here at the state level, we very much rely on the CPR network, on your local organizing, on people's personal networks and groups to mobilize them at these key moments to direct comments to the right body, to the legislators during the legislative process. On the next slide, I'm just going to give you just a brief update on what's happening at the national and federal level. Really, the most encouraging movement is happening through corporate campaigning. Just this past a couple weeks ago, on April 13th, I think it broke, but Walmart announced that they are, very much due to the ongoing campaigns of Friends of the Earth, they are agreeing to require that all of their produce and flower producers are producing without, or rather are producing using integrated pest management by 2025. And they're also encouraging them to phase out use of neonics and chlorpyrifos and not to substitute worse things in their place. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. I don't want to give Walmart too much praise, but it is I think a bellwether for where things are moving, and that's very much again because of the grassroots, joining in these campaigns through our partners at Friends of the Earth. The federal legislative efforts, I wanted to make sure folks are aware that the Saving America's Pollinators Act is going to be reintroduced. But as many of us, realize, really anything coming from the Democratic side is going to be DOA when it gets to the Senate, unless they do something about the filibuster. So we're going to continue to push for pollinator protection at the federal level. But it seems like the best move is on the regulatory side with our friends at Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, trying to reinstate the neonic ban on wildlife refuges, which was during the previous administration. They rolled that back. So we're trying to bring that back, and then to list the American bumblebee as endangered, so that we can then leverage that to protect, to take these measures to reduce pesticides. So I'm going to stop there. I haven't been tracking the questions. We're gonna stop here before we dig into a bit of more of how the CPR network works. So what do we have?
Sure. Marty, we have some great and some very interesting questions. So I'm going to start off with a question that came in concerning organic pest management. What would be considered organic? There are two questions on that. One, how safe is organic pest management? And as it relates to things like cedar oil and diatomaceous earth, are they truly organic? Are they safe? Companies make all kinds of claims. So that is two questions to start us right off.
Right. Well, I think we need another webinar to get into that. But so to have, NOFA has a certification for organic land care. So any firm that is presenting as providing organic land care, they need to go through this process. It's the NOFA Organic Land Care OLC certification. So we do have standards. If they are misrepresenting, there's recourse for that. Certainly, there's a lot of greenwashing. You got to watch out, because there will be firms saying that they're gonna be natural. They're using the word natural, less harmful. There's no standard for natural. You want to look for NOFA OLC, and we do have a list of providers that are doing that. And again, I'm not going to be able to get too much into it, but organic land care doesn't rely on pesticides. Yes, there's things like cedar oil, and there are other chemical means to control pests, but it very much relies on promoting healthy soils and biodiversity of the landscapes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have something here on implementation. How do you balance the need for additional staff to implement organic manual land management at a time when towns do not have budgets to support extra mowing?
Yep, that's great. So the short of that is there's an initial investment where the first couple of years is going to cost more to transition to organic, but after that initial 2 years, the annual cost of maintenance is far less because there's far fewer inputs that are going to need to be purchased. At least that's what we learn through the training, and what I've been told by organic land care specialists. But that is certainly a concern, and I think some communities are not going to have readily available resources to transition to organic land care, and that's obviously an issue we need to address.
Okay. And how are these policies enforced? Do lawn companies know they aren't allowed to spray in towns with pesticide policies? Who is liable, the homeowner or landscape company? And then how do you deal with federal interstate policy where it deals with freight lines and interstate commerce and so forth?
Yeah, great. So as far as enforcing pesticide rules in the town, again, because we live in a preemption state, the town isn't going to be able to say, what people can do on private property any more than what's in the regulatory at the state level. When it comes to what they're doing at the town level, if you have a board of health regulations mandating organic land care, that is enforceable by law. The local boards of health in Massachusetts are incredibly powerful. I'm not aware of cases of that going sideways, but the standard is that boards of health are enforceable by law. We have a question to close. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
All right. I mean, we're gonna I see you have a lot of good questions here. A lot of questions.
Yeah, we do.
A lot of things about opting out of the mosquito spray, and I'll paste a link in there because we do have some great resources with our mosquito coalition. We have several towns that are opting out, and we have coalition partners who are providing templates for those alternative plans and guidance on the opt-out process. The deadline is May 15th to submit those alternative plans. So if anyone listening on this call is in a community where local town officials are talking about or at all sympathetic to the idea of opting out of the state's mosquito disease management program, please do get in touch. Like I said, we have some resources on the link I just pasted with alternative plans, and we have coalition partners that will work as best they can with your local municipalities to get those plans together and submitted by May 15th.
Okay. And I have a question here from Kadra. This looks like it's dealing with a particular resolution they're dealing with in their city council. People sign up for things, but then when it's time to show up, if you will, they may not always show up in the mobilization effort. She has some questions around community mobilization and education, particularly in the issue they're dealing with in their area.
Well, that's a perfect question for one of our CPR meetings. And yeah, Mireille.
That's a great question. We'll talk a little bit more in the second half of the webinar about the organizing piece that fuels these policy changes. And that is one of the things that we talk about at CPR meetings, a lot of stuff around town meetings, how to get something on the town warrant to begin with, and then how to get folks to show up and vote for that, and just mobilizing and growing your group in general. So it's hard to get into all the details of that right now, but we definitely, come to our CPR meetings and we can help you out. Okay.
And I'll give this last one and I'll let you all go into that part too. There's a question on how do we fight True Green ChemLawn? They have very aggressive junk mail campaign. And I would love to know what our rights and options are for exposing their chemicals and oversaturated endeavors for putting chemicals on so many yards of people. So how do we fight those companies, True Green ChemLawn?
Oh, I think that came from Ian, didn't it? I love that question, and that sounds like a corporate campaign to me, which is a lot of fun, and that's something that we should talk about with our Mass Pollinators Network and CPR. Maybe some brand damage, walking that line to expose the greenwashing. Yeah, we need that, absolutely. They're siphoning off interest, people that want to do the right thing, and that's greenwashing straight up. And we do need to expose that. And yes, there may be repercussions and challenges to doing things like that, but I think that's what a grassroots movement is best at, is that kind of decentralized education, and I don't know if you caught that phrase, but brand damage is a fun way to go about it. So I don't know, Ian, maybe you can work out some changes to to their materials there, and we can get the word out.
Okay.
Great.
And do you want to take this last one? It's about a product. What is known about glufosinate, which is currently used in our town instead of glyphosate? And that will be the last one. You can go into part 2.
Yeah, I mean, you know, well, I'd have to pull the resources up there, but I know that that's one of the secondary, you know, compounds that are also of great concern. And that's exactly the problem, is like, we don't want to set up this dynamic of regrettable, what they call regrettable substitutions. We want to promote a holistic solution that is decreasing our reliance on pesticides to begin with, so that they're stuck in this loop where they think, okay, if I can't use that, I got to use another chemical. But we need to change the story and work with natural systems, work with biodiversity, and limit our reliance on them altogether. So that's a point of pushing these organic land care methods.
All right, we're going to jump into part 2, and we'll have another section for questions as well later on. So a little bit more about the CPR network specifically, and the calls that we have monthly. The goals on these calls are to learn some key organizing skills, like what someone asked earlier about, you know, how to get folks to actually turn out and mobilize in support of these things. We share resources and tactics so that folks don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have a really big folder full of sample resolutions, sample ordinances, all sorts of things that towns have passed, and lots of answers to questions you may have. And then we also connect so that we can build a movement across the state from the bottom up, so that, you know, from all the way, you know, Eastern Mass, all the way west, north and south, all different corners of the state. Folks are connecting with other people who care about these issues and working on them, and may have gone through steps of the process and be able to offer advice. So we can help you learn. We troubleshoot, we train, we share resources. Our next call is next month. It's usually the 4th Thursday of the month. Next month is a little bit different, but it's May 20th at 7 p.m. And on every call usually, and especially every now and then, we open it up to a little bit more folks sharing about a campaign they're specifically working on in their community, and getting advice and really digging into the specifics of what they are doing. We connect and network. We have this open directory of people who agreed to be listed on this spreadsheet, and you can reach out to them and ask them questions. Maybe they live in your town and you didn't know that they also cared about this. We help you build your group. So we have these lists of folks across the state who have expressed interest in reducing pesticide usage, and we can help you connect with them. And then last, as I mentioned, we have this huge Google Drive folder with tons of useful resources that we can share with you. And these slides will go out after this webinar, and all of these links will take you right to those resources that we're mentioning. And then we do a bunch of different training modules as part of these calls. And this is just an example. There, you know, we're always open to other requests from folks, but mainly we talk about messaging, how to frame this issue, the campaign, so that you are getting across to folks and really building support. Talk about media events if you want to get visibility, get in the local news. How to build your group, get more folks involved, and get them to turn out to events as well. Fundraising, if that's relevant, to have financial support for the work you want to do in your community. How to win a community vote. That's especially, you know, especially for towns that have town meeting and want to get something passed that way. We have specific workshops for that. Planning for an upcoming hearing. If the Board of Health or the City Council is going to talk about this, how can you prep to get folks to show up and testify in support of your effort? And then along the way, always reevaluating and updating your campaign plan. What are the next steps that make sense, and how can you get to your end goal? So at our last call in March, we did the messaging module that is listed here, and I wanted to kind of share some of the results of that and show you all what this kind of thing can look like. So as part of our messaging, the first thing we talk about is words that help, words that we want to use when we're talking about the issue to get folks on board, get them excited, and really build positive momentum. And these were all things that our CPR network folks brainstormed during that discussion. So, saying that it's cost effective, it's a community that cares, sustainable, it protects wildlife, it's good for the health of our children, etc. You can take a look at these words. And I'm sure you all are thinking of many more words that would be good to include as well. So we start the messaging brainstorm with just what are all the good words? So, they can be buzzwords or just phrases or just things that we want to make sure we integrate into the final message. And then we talk about words that hurt and we want to avoid because they turn people off or paint the issue in a more negative light. For example, poisoning the community, we don't want to place blame and make someone the villain. Regulation often turns people off, makes them wary. Same thing, restriction, moratorium, fining, breaking the law, all those things, ways of phrasing this and framing it usually are things that we want to avoid. And then once we have those words that are good and the words that are not so good, we want to start thinking about sentences and our, kind of the key phrases that are going to be really important to communicate the issue. And the first is, what is the problem? How can we paint a picture of the threat that we're facing? So in italics, so those are some of the phrases that the group brainstormed that were, the problem that we are dealing with. And we kind of turned that into, we pulled a few of those together into the sentence at the bottom that continued use of pesticides at current levels will eliminate native species of insects, pollinators, and birds, which will threaten our food supply and further impact the health of vulnerable communities. So this is just one way of many that we could be verbalizing the problem with using pesticides, the problem that we want to fix by reducing pesticide usage. So we've outlined the problem. The next step is to think of the solution. What is, if you could press a button and make the change happen, what do you want that end result to be? And in that, you want to name your goals, your demand, your ideal outcome. So these are some examples. Folks mentioned beautiful gardens and green lawns without chemicals, or healthy living landscapes, growing food, pollinator gardens, no more Roundup. These are all endpoints that you can get to, that you can be striving for in your community. And that, could depend based on your group or your community, what is that endpoint you want to get to. And then the last piece, once you have your problem and your solution, what is the action? What are you calling on decision makers to use their power to do? And remember, so a key thing here is strategy. Are you trying to paint the decision maker as a potential hero on the campaign who can step up and do the right thing? Are you trying to provide political cover for them to do what you want them to do? Are you pressuring them to do that? So that's going to affect the tone that you use here. But some examples of action were to pass a pollinator-friendly resolution, to take stock of current municipal pesticide usage, pass legislation, etc. You can see the different examples here on the slide. And then you pull these three pieces together, the problem, the action, and the solution, into your message. And there are 4 C's we use for the message: compelling, control, concise, and consistent. So you want to use compelling words that control your message and create a concise version that you can consistently say all the time to the public, elected officials, the media. This is the answer to the question, what is your campaign about? So someone you run into at the grocery store, you mention to them what you're working on, and you have this sentence or two that explains it pretty concisely, succinctly, and in a compelling way. And then the last piece we usually touch on in this workshop is turning that message into a slogan. How can you make it really short, an ideal phrase for stickers, fact sheets, hashtags, etc. That is the one thing you really want people to remember. You could chant if you had some kind of rally, and you usually want to make sure it includes your demand so that you really get your key point across. So that's a little bit of an example of the modules that we do during our training to help you all with the grassroots organizing skills that are going to allow communities to be successful in passing these resolutions and getting their Board of Health to step up and making these policy changes. So we can do a lot of things at the CPR network, but there are some things that we can't promise. We can't promise that we have the answers to all of your questions on an individual basis. Marty and I both have a lot going on outside of CPR meetings, but at those monthly meetings is a really great place to ask questions, because also other community members who are present often have the answers too. So it's really good to crowdsource knowledge. We're also not lawyers or scientists, though we do have some connections to lawyers and scientists. We are not experts in those fields ourselves. So just something to be mindful in the CPR network is that we have limited capacity for super individualized support, but we do, it is a network. And so you can find support from each other as well. And you definitely don't have to be on every call. Show up when it works for you and the topic is interesting. If you want to meet other folks, it's really flexible. So some immediate next steps, maybe Marty or Anna can put the link in the chat. This is our activist sign up form. If you're interested in being added to the email list for the CPR network and hearing about our future webinars, the future monthly meetings, fill out the Google form at that link and we'll make sure that we get you looped in. Another step you can take is get a group together, talk to a few neighbors or friends in your area. And there's starting a local group guide that Beyond Pesticides have, which is usually helpful. We have a video that we can send you. And decide what you want to do locally and who your target would be. Are you going to try to get something on the town warrant for a town meeting and get the community to vote for something? Are you going to ask city council to take action, or your board of health? What avenue do you want to pursue? And then do some local research for a town meeting resolution. Talk to your town clerk, find out how many signatures you need and what the deadline is to get something on the warrant. If you're going the city council or board of health route, ask for a meeting with your group, ask them to sit down with you and see where they stand, figure out who your allies are and who you're going to need to persuade. And then share any resources that you find and ask for any that we may have. As I said, we have a really big Google Drive full of lots of information for you to dig through. And if you're already, you've already got a group going, you're already experienced working on this stuff, then share your information with us and your expertise for the activist directory. If you're interested in supporting other communities, I saw someone mention in the chat earlier that they could really use a mentor with a town meeting coming up. And that's something that we definitely love to connect activists from different communities for, so you can mentor each other. Consider being a guest speaker on a future call or gathering. That's one thing we love to do at our CPR network meetings, is have folks who have been successful in their communities share their own experiences, talk about how it went for them so that other folks have a better sense of what it concretely looks like. And share resources that you found that have been really helpful. And also let us know if you're interested in supporting statewide organizing and being, maybe part of the back end management of the network, and helping us make it even more successful. And, regardless of whether you've already got a group going or you're brand new to it, fill out the sign up form to join the network and we'll get you looped into our future meetings. And with that, we'll pause for questions again, and I'll stop the sharing so we can see each other.
Okay, great. Wow, that's a lot of excellent work. And for those who have campaigns going on, please take advantage of that and join the network. So there was a question that came through about opting out around mosquito spraying. And the question is, does NOFA have a campaign to outreach to members in every town to advocate to opt out?
Great. Yeah. So, we're part of a coalition that we've been helping, we've been facilitating since last April, that includes Beyond Pesticides, Community Action Works, Community Conservation Law Foundation, Lead for Pollinators, Mass Association of Conservation Commissions, Mass Service Alliance, and several others that we're working on trying to figure out what will pass muster for a community opt-out. We have an alternative plan that's been developed by the folks at Beyond Pesticides and Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. And we need to see what will actually work. And so we're starting with the low-hanging fruit as far as the communities that we know that there are, officials that want to make this happen, select boards of health, et cetera. And working with that smaller handful on this process to see what will work, and then we can export that for the next cycle. So if that's something that anyone here wants to work on as far as doing that targeted outreach, I'd love to connect on that. But we're trying to be deliberate and figure out what works, and then we can spread it.
Okay, very good. And this is coming from Stephen Power. For us, it seems that Dylan Fernandez's bill is the most relevant. How do we push this?
Yeah, all right. So contacting the legislators, that's what it comes down to, right? Fortunately, they changed one of the rules, the way the House operates. We can excuse me, we can get co-sponsors on the bill until it's actually reported out from its first committee. So we have a few months likely to get more co-sponsors on this. So the more co-sponsors the bill has, the more momentum it is perceived to have, the more attention it gets from leadership. We also, so that means phone calls, emails to legislators from their constituents asking them to co-sponsor that bill. We also want to make sure that we submit testimony when the hearing happens, and that we get as many people to that virtual hearing room as we can on these bills. And so, following, making sure you're on the NOFA mass email list, making sure you're on the CPR list, you're going to be getting those alerts at those key moments for those mobilizations. Now, I do want to be honest with the reality of the legislature, and as it is right now, it is exceedingly difficult to get anything through the legislative process that is going to challenge corporate power because of the inordinate influence that they have on the process. So that's why we're also part of the Act On Mass campaign, which is bringing greater transparency to the State House, to do such things as institute a term limit for the Speaker of the House, to make all committee votes public so that we know how the committees vote. We really need to improve we have one of the poorest functioning state democracies in the country, unfortunately. And so we need to address that. We're going to continue to increase the awareness of the issue and to push it. But we really need to address some of these bigger problems with our democracy if we're going to get something like this through.
And Marty, that bill that he's referring to, what is that bill exactly? If you can give a little bit more detail on that one.
Yeah, so that is a bill that it basically addresses the state preemption issue directly by allowing local municipalities, if their Board of Health deems it necessary to restrict pesticides in a way that is more stringent than what the state currently has on file. So that if we were to pass Rep. Fernandez's bill, then we could have a townwide ban on glyphosate, for instance, and it could be enforceable by the board, through the Board of Health. And that's exactly why, the pesticide lobby, they went in a strategic way, state by state, and passed these preemption laws because they didn't want to have a patchwork of pesticide regulations. They didn't want the local towns to be able to make these restrictions. They want to have uniform regulations across the state, regardless of local vulnerabilities, environmental justice communities, and ecosystems that need to be protected. It's sort of the lowest common denominator. And then you have the Pesticide Board subcommittee rubber stamping approvals of these pesticides based on the EPA's science, which of course we know has been captured by industry. So that's what it would do.
Okay, great. As we are beginning to, hour passes by real fast, particularly when you have such wonderful information. But as we begin to wind down, we have about 8 minutes left. Are there any questions out there? If you want to take yourself off of mute, ask a quick question and place yourself back on mute so that we can end out with a little bit more information. Then we have a few closing comments. So if there's anyone out there that has a quick question. Ellen, you raised your hand. Feel free, please take yourself off of mute and ask your question. Ellen, fine, are you out there?
I see, Ellen might be having a hard time with the interface there, I don't know, but she raised a very good point. Thank you, Ellen, that she said, I think it's better bet on state action and getting people like us onto the Pesticide Board subcommittee. Love it, Ellen. Yeah, we need to reform how the Pesticide Board subcommittee operates. And like I said, we are working with our legislative allies on that. Do expect an announcement in coming weeks for an initiative to reform how the Pesticide Board operates. We need people attending those public meetings. Yeah, we're gonna have to work on the Pesticide Board subcommittee. Absolutely. I did want to also be sure to bring attention, yeah, and how they're appointed. Right now, there's one appointee by the governor, and that is currently a pesticide applicator. And so we need members of the public, we need members of the conservation community, of the organic community on there, and that's part of the reforms that we're pushing for. There is another important opportunity for you to provide input on pesticides, and that is on Monday, May 5th. May 3rd. There is a public listening session of the Mosquito Control Task Force. And we really do need people to turn out for that. Of course, it's on Zoom. You'll find all the details on our Mosquito page, which I'll paste again in the chat. They're accepting written comments until the end of the day on May 5th. But we really need folks to show up for that. If we could get, this many people on that public meeting on Monday, it's 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You don't have to have testimony prepared, just show up, and that would really go a long way. And then we can submit written testimony, which we have a sample letter on our website that I just pasted there. Looks like folks are saying they're already registered and going. I'm really happy to hear that. Great. Do we have any other?
Yes, we have one more, and we'll close out on this. This is in reference to next steps on pesticide-free public spaces. Can you send us a list of towns that have passed successful resolutions? Are we up to 15 towns yet?
Yeah, we're at just about that. We can certainly send. I should set that up on the public-facing website. We have a spreadsheet that we have, but I thank you for that suggestion. Yes, I can absolutely share that. I don't know who asked that, but feel free to email me and I can send you the list, marty@nofamass.org. But yeah, great idea.
I think that was Ellen's question that she wasn't able to unmute for earlier.
Good.
All right, well, to close this out here, a reminder that our next CPR Network call is Thursday, May 20th at 7 p.m. And you can sign up for that at this link that hopefully Marty will type into the chat. We can also make sure it's in the follow-up email, so you can click on that and register for that Zoom link. We would love to see you there. And also note that Marty mentioned this briefly, I think in the chat in response to someone asking for mentoring. The CPR Network, in addition to having these meetings, we have a Google group. It's an email list of about 50 folks across the state. And we definitely encourage those of you who are already on it. You can send, Marty and I aren't the only ones who can send emails to that group. You all can as well. It's a good resource. Again, it's another opportunity for sharing information and crowdsourcing knowledge. And I'm gonna hand it over to Marty for this announcement.
Yeah, if folks haven't heard yet, we put the word out when we were doing our fundraising back in December, and then when we posted our job posting for our network coordinator. But I want to make sure you're all aware of the Massachusetts Pollinator Network. And actually, there are several attendees on this call are in the running for our network coordinator position, which we're in the middle of our hiring process now. We have a few more interviews to do next week, and really looking forward to getting this launched by Pollinator Week, summer solstice. And this is building on the momentum of local organizing with the Western Mass Pollinator Network that they've been organizing for years. They approached us to help them scale this out statewide, and we're partnering with Community Action Works on this to help connect pollinator pathway groups and protector groups from across the state to leverage the learnings, the resources, very similar to the CPR network with a focus on protecting pollinators and reducing pesticides. And you can check out our website, masspollinatornetwork.org. We had a speaker series last month with a couple great presentations as a fundraiser for it. You can, if you make a donation any amount, we'd be happy to send you those recordings. If folks are feeling generous and wanting to support the work, we're still raising our money to pay for a full year for our Pollinator Network coordinator. So please do check it out, masspollinatornetwork.org. Find the information on what our plans are. Check out those videos and donate if you're able to.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty. And thank you all for being here tonight and tuning in to this webinar about policy and organizing around pesticide work. We're definitely excited to see hopefully some new faces at the CPR Network meeting next month, and hope you have a good rest of your night, everyone. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you both for such a wonderful event, a wonderful webinar. Please reach out to Mireille and Marty if you have further questions. Please attend the CPR meetings, and we look forward to you joining us again in June for another Inspiring Ideas. We're talking all about food access, highlighting one of our groups in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and how they get healthy food into communities that don't necessarily have that access. Everyone have a great night and be well.
Thanks, everyone.